All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are delighted to welcome you to another insightful session on connecting the dots. On behalf of HRAI, I extend a warm welcome to all our participants to today's discussion on this insightful topic, creating gender inclusive workplaces that deliver impact. First and foremost, our heartfelt thanks to our esteemed speakers for joining us today and contributing their valuable perspective to this panel discussion. Ms. Preeti Patil Kulkarni, Global HR Director at Schneider Electric. Ms. Namita Pandey, Chief Human Resources Officer at Srijan. Mr. Danish Sheikh, Head HR Center of Excellence at ACG Capsules. Mr. Prakash Ramaya, Head Internal Audit at Vartana. And Ms. Radhika Niranjan, Founder and CEO at RNI Associates. We are truly honored to have such accomplished leaders with us, bringing their expertise and experience to today's discussion. To know more about our speakers, you may follow them on LinkedIn. Their profiles have been shared in the chat window. For more information about HRA and our upcoming events, please visit the links shared in the chat. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Ms. Radhika Niranjan, who will be leading this discussion with her deep insights and expertise. Without taking much of your time, I now hand it over to you, Ms. Radhika.
Hi, Faizan. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Faizan, for the opportunity for all of us to discuss this extremely important, often spoken about, and felt underworked topic called gender inclusivity in the true spirit, right? So, what we are going to discuss today is about gender inclusion in practice rather than beautiful murals on the wall, right? And all four of our esteemed speakers are going to be sharing their insights on some questions which perhaps may feel a little uncomfortable, but will certainly serve as thought provoking, concepts that each one of us can apply in our respective spaces. So to start the conversation, I would want to ask maybe Namita that where do you think that gender inclusion is being performed rather than just practiced in organizations in general today, and any specific example from your organization that you would want to share?
Yeah. So good evening, all of you. Thank you, Radhika, for moderating the session and starting with me. Although, as I think you clearly mentioned, this is like a hot topic, which whatever and whatsoever time you keep on discussing, but it's not easy to come to certain conclusions. So, picking on to the question which you mentioned about performance and performing, I would say I think most of the organizations nowadays they are doing a very good job in the sense of displaying gender inclusion. But I think there are very few organizations who are actually deeply embedding it. So, but as you see in the hiring metrics, if you see like if you have to ask an organization how are you performing in gender, they'll show the hiring metrics, they'll show the diversity campaigns, they will show the events, the visibility that they made through events. But I think the real test lies in the everyday culture. So who is getting heard, who is getting promoted in the organization, and are the people feeling safe enough to belong, to actually show that they are part of it and that inclusivity is there. So until we have this inclusion moving from optics to outcomes, I think from policy level to actually practice level. So we're still in the realm of performance only. So recently I met a middle-aged career woman in a very good organization, and we were having some discussions as she was recently back from her maternity leave, and I was asking how was it, and if I just want to quote about that organization, there were a lot of policies. There were a lot of great celebrations of International Women's Day. Everything was really great and fascinating. Plus, even there was policy of flexible work arrangements also. So I felt that everything is going so great and good. But when I asked her like how was it all, so she was saying everything went great. She was enjoying flexible work arrangements and all. But when the chance of promotion came, so people said that you were not visible enough. You were not there for this whole time of 6 months to 1 year. We could see you very less, and so your engagement in the overall organizational thinking is not there. So I think this is where the real test is. This is actually the practice. If whatever organizations are writing in their policies, but are they actually practicing it? If people are not feeling safe enough to share or safe enough to use those policies, because I've also seen cases where things are mentioned in the policies, but people are not actually ready or prepared to use it in a very fair manner, then it's just only performing, but it is not practicing. Yeah.
Mm, nice. So I think, in a nutshell, what I can sense from your conversation is that while there is intent, the application is still, miles to head in the direction that we as leaders envision it to be, is what your perspective says. To that, I want to move to maybe Preeti, where I want you to, since you're also into inclusion as a large part of your business, as I understand, uh, what is that one everyday workplace behavior, that consciously and unconsciously excludes people, but largely is accepted as a business norm that you may have witnessed and which you work towards changing?
Absolutely. And I so agree to Namita what she said on the visibility part. And it's kind of an extension to what I would like to share. And I've seen this happening in the organization, and consciously, I think we are trying to strive to change that this should not happen. So something which I would like to call upon, and we don't do it consciously, is doing these informal meetups, decision making in the hallway, when people are not available, and specifically to the women category, it impacts the most. The reason because women not only takes care, I mean, most largely takes care of what is going on at the office, but we have our own stuff to do beyond work as well, right? So not being part of these informal connects, not being part of, and something which Namita touched as well, is something which prevails mostly in organizations which are building up, starting up, and it is felt that it's very normal that there are hallway conversation or after hours gathering, where these decision makings are happening. There are off calendar quick syncs which people don't even know. And I would not say that this is only impacting the gender diversity. There could be also other diversity people which it could impact, or even men folks as well. But overall, when you see as an overarching impact on the under the umbrella of inclusion, there are people who get missed out when these decision making is happening, and that impacts to the person's thing. Now, why it is considered as a norm or why it is tolerated by the organization, again, it depends on the maturity of the organizations, right? There are sometimes when you are a growing organization, this is felt very normal because there is a speed over inclusion, or there is where an idea comes through and we don't have time to gather everybody to do it. So there is a lot of value which comes in that, oh, we are moving in the right direction, it is helping us. But in the long term, the organization fails to realize that we are not actually creating a culture of inclusion, but we are just prioritizing the impact or outcome over ensuring that people feel included within the organization. So that is something, at least at Schneider Electric, we consciously ensure that we don't have these, no decisions are made in informal setups. Yes, we do have informal setups to create bonding for the organization, but not any structured decision has to be made in a formal setup, and there has to be a sign-off process. And mostly now, as we are moving towards the agile organization, I think that helps to curb that. But this is something which I felt is very, very normal in the organizations. Seldom people look about it, and it gets ignored, and then it gets manifested into bigger problems as the organization becomes mature over a period of time.
All right. So two things that I could straight away call. One is the organizational maturity to identify and adapt to inclusion as a practice, which I also picked up in Namita's words. To segue from here into the real world scenarios and now looking at our internal auditor, Prakash, let's understand from you, who do you think has to adjust more, quote unquote, in workplaces to succeed, and why?
Yeah, thank you, Radhika. So let me answer this with a real situation I have seen in my personal workplace. We had a high performing team member. Okay. She was extremely sharp, consistent, and well respected. But after she returned from a maternity leave, her performance didn't drop, but her visibility did. So late evening meetings, last minute travel, informal decision making discussions. She was not always part of this. It is not because she lacked capability, but because the system was not designed for her reality at that stage of life. Over time, the narrative quietly shifted from top performer to less available. Now, here's the turning point. Uh, Instead of expecting her to adjust more, our team made a few deliberate changes. Key discussions were moved to more inclusive time slots. Important decisions were documented instead of being taken informally. Then flexibility was normalized, not just for her, but for everyone. So within months, she was back, not just performing, but leading critical initiatives. That experience taught me something important. It is not that women or any group need to adjust more to succeed. It is that the workplaces need to be designed more thoughtfully to enable everyone to succeed. Because inclusion is not about asking people to fit into the system. It is about building a system where everyone can thrive. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Radhika.
Awesome. So the thread that I pick up from Prakash, you is that inclusion is essentially a mindset of bringing allies into the system,
True.
building the ecosystem to adjust and bring everyone
Exactly.
together. Which brings me
Yes.
to the next point, Danish, that I'm going to ask you. What is, if I have to ask you, the real allyship looking like when it's not visible, not rewarded, not even spoken about, but somewhere prevalent, which has really created a success story in your ecosystem?
So, thank you for asking this. And, my research is also all about allyship. So for me, real allyship is what you do when there is nothing to gain, when there is no visibility in it for you, no recognition, no acknowledgement. And that is when you know that, the intent is real. At a lot of times we associate allyship with visible moments, campaigns, statements, events, and they are important. It's not like they are not, because they create awareness, they signal support. But allyship in its truest form shows up in everyday decisions. It is more about how do you respond to something that is said in a meeting, whether you choose to change or challenge a biased assumption, when you correct something gently without making it uncomfortable, when you silently, correct uh, misgendering someone. And, if you look at gender also in that sense, it's not really binary anymore, right? It's a spectrum. So, you know, it's also about how do you advocate for people when they are not in the room. So these are small moments, but they shape, outcomes. And what makes them powerful is that they're consistent, not occasional, not performative. It is the part of how you operate. So when we bring in the lens of gender, like I said, which is especially beyond the binary, this becomes even more important, because for many individuals, inclusion is not tested in big moments. It is tested in whether they feel, whether they feel seen every day, whether they feel respected and how they are addressed. They are not required to constantly explain or justify themselves. So allyship is not really about grand gestures. It's about reducing that everyday friction. It's uh, how do I put it? It's more systemic in that sense. It's not just interpersonal, So if you're making it systemic, you will question processes that may unintentionally exclude people. Uh, it might mean expanding categories or definitions that are too rigid, ensuring that systems evolve, along with our understanding of identity. Because if you look at allyship, if it only remains at the level of behavior, it will be fragile. But when it starts influencing systems, decisions, it becomes more embedded. And that is where it becomes truly, meaningful. So that I think would be my perspective. And we at ACG do a lot of work to make it more systemic, more part of our ecosystem, more day to day.
Mm.
If I give my own personal example, it was uh, a very proud moment for me where I could add my partner to my Mediclaim. It's a very small thing, but when you do it, you feel that you're part of something bigger, you feel recognized, you feel legitimate. You know, that's when it truly becomes meaningful as allyship.
Wonderful. 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 In fact, honestly speaking, from all what you have said, right, Danish, whether you said about allyship, what Prakash told about, adapting to changing circumstances rather than asking an individual to adapt to avoid the slow shift of narrative, to
Yeah.
what Preeti suggested that, while informal settings are important, decisions need to be in an inclusive platform so that nobody feels left out. And what Namita said very clearly that while we all want to do it, there is a lot that needs to be done in practice rather than put it on beautiful mirrors. So these are, really interesting insights for anyone who's trying to understand how inclusion as a practice has to become part of everyone's DNA. Okay, individually and collectively as an organization, because only then we are moving beyond the talk into real action. Now I'll come to the second segment, which is a little more interesting and a little more challenging, if I have to say myself. Let's come to Preeti. Okay, so Preeti, the question I have for you is, let's say that you have to remove one deeply embedded workplace norm. That's a non-negotiable as on today in your organization. But if this norm goes away, your workplace inclusion, and not only limited to the binary definition of gender, as Danish said, has to be addressed, what would this one thing be?
I think I will go ahead with the thread which we have already created, right? Very strongly saying that availability is equal to commitment, which I think both Namita, Danish, and as well as Prakash mentioned. Many a times it is seen that, okay, if you are not visible, you're not seen anywhere, and the self branding is not being done properly, you are just nowhere. And many discussions, promotions today in the organization, or even giving any qualified project or something, actually get based on this thing. I think we have to deeply remove this, the reason because that's pulling down. And again, it's not only for one gender, it is across the gender. It could be a generational bias, it could be a gender bias, it could be even the other genders which we have. And just because somebody is in a certain gender pattern, I mean, it just
Hmm.
becomes a norm that I don't want to include that person, or I don't want to consider the person. I think it has to be purely based on performance and the impact and the outcomes a person has created. So just because that I have a norm that I will not work beyond work hours, but I am able to complete my job within the stipulated time, or I follow a work life integration. So what I mean by integration today is that being where you need to be, right? If you have to be in your son's school, then so be it. Even if it's a working day, I will be there and I will be unavailable for those couple of hours where I need to go for, say, a PTM or any other school event. But the same thing, if work demands for me to be in the weekday weekends available, I will make myself available. But that should not become a criteria. Now, for example, there are bachelors, or there are spinsters, or there are people who have got married but do not have children. Or it could be any other community, like somebody is busy on Sundays because they belong to Christianity and they need to go to church. So there are many different aspects of what makes a person not available on a certain day. Some people have their own rules and values and their system saying that, okay, I don't want to join these informal connects because I don't like drinking, I don't like socializing. I am a person who likes to be with myself, and that's a personal choice a person has to be made. So overall, what I'm trying to say is this availability equals to commitment, or equals to giving more opportunities for such people who are just available and not looking at the criteria of the impact or the contribution which an individual is making, is something which
Mm.
is really killing the organizations today. And as much as I urge that we need to get away from that, and we put a lot of. Now, how this can be corrected is with good, training, or it could be the coaching to the leadership level. And it is not only the senior leadership, but also the middle management and the first line managers who needs to understand that this is not something which is normal, it is unacceptable, and there are consequences to not adhering to that. But today, what happens is, it again depends upon which part of the country you are in, which part of the world you are in, and which part of the belief system you have been brought up with, and you just continue to follow that. And as human resources, sometimes we don't even challenge it. So my urge is to both the categories of leadership, it is there available in this forum, then start walking the talk. And for HR, please challenge back. If you are seeing something which is not a norm, we need to challenge it. We need to challenge at senior leadership level so that it becomes top to down approach. And as well as it's a walk the talk, which we are doing to kill these biases in the organization.
Fabulous. So again, a key takeaway is stop being a follower and challenge the norm where required. That's one very strong takeaway that I get. Being available is equal to being committed is again something that is a very deep unconscious belief that most of us have seen in our organizations, which we need to probably challenge. Now, many organizations claim that yes, we have broken this norm. Okay, we give flexible working.
I just want to add
Brilliant.
one more thing, Radhika. I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you. A very good example came to my mind. So last year, and it's my personal example, okay? Last year, what happened when I had my appraisal and I was asking my boss that, okay, tell me, and I'm a global HR in a global setup. So mostly it's all team calls and you can't really be physically present everywhere. And the biggest feedback I got is you're not holding your space. I said, what does that even mean? Now, my boss comes from a global marketing setup where they are very known to brand themselves, making beautiful PPTs, pitches, versus I am a person who comes more from an R&D background, software background, where we are mostly working behind the scenes and ensuring that things are happening, but not into so much of emailing, so much of public talking, so much of, trying to make your presence felt in every meeting. Like, some people can talk just like that, whether it is relevant or not relevant. So that was something which came as a feedback to me. I said, okay, so be it. If that's what you want, let me start doing it. And trust me, this 3 months, I have been like sending emails out, whether it is relevant, not relevant, because I need to fit the bill. I mean, it also creates a pressure on me that why am I supposed to do when I don't believe in it? But then so much you can fight back, right? And if it is not coming from the leadership, as I said, it becomes so difficult for an individual that I need to forcefully fit myself into the environment where I know the very simple question I asked him that where is it impacting my work? He's like, no, it's not impacting. So I said, I have my own way to do things. But no, he's like, no, you need to be available. You need to command your space and you need to be there. Then I said, maybe it's an element of that how an organization culture sees you, but then it's not like it's impacting. So again, the urge is like we don't need to really fall prey into that. If somebody is asking you to do completely what the person wants, but have a balance of that, you correct that perception but still continue to do what you're doing, so it becomes a balance of both. It just reminded me of this example, and that's why. So over to you.
Okay, cool. In fact, what you demonstrated clearly means that still, while we speak a lot about inclusion, there is a lot of space because people feel compelled to, get out of their comfort zones and try and fit in or adapt.
Yeah,
That being said, the point I was making is some companies flaunt proudly that, you know what, we have an outstanding culture, we have given flexibility, we love our people, and we've given flexibility. So my question now, Prakash, to you would be that yes, flexibilities are given, but who actually benefits, or do you often observe that there is more misuse than use of this flexibility? And how can we deal with that as champions of inclusion? So, the spirit is retained.
Yeah. So let me be a bit direct here. Flexibility does not fail because of the policy. It fails because of the perception. On paper, flexibility benefits everyone, but in reality, it often benefits the organizations more than the individual, and sometimes it at the cost of the fairness. But here is the uncomfortable truth: the people who use flexibility are often seen as less committed, and the people who don't use it are often over relied on. And leadership, we like to believe we are being inclusive while quietly rewarding visibility over outcomes. So what happens is, women and caregivers use flexibility and pay with a slower career progression. Others compensate and pay with burnout. And the other side, the organizations celebrate flexibility without measuring its hidden cost. So that is not inclusion. That is redistribution of pressure. So maybe the real question we should ask is not who benefits from flexibility, but are we rewarding performance or just presence? Because until we shift that mindset, flexibility will remain a benefit that comes with a silent price tag. And if inclusion comes with a cost, we need to be honest about who is actually paying for it. Right? Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Rika.
Nice. Inclusion comes at a cost, rings a bell. Because most of us talk about metrics, measurement, and most of it is linked to some cost or reward, right?
Correct.
So, interesting concept. Uh, most of us are aware, taking a segue from that, in terms of metrics, that everyone loves metrics in corporates. Okay, and diversity has become a metric. So, my question, Namita, to you would be that if we remove all diversity targets. Oh, we must have 33% at least women representation. Oh, we must have pride celebrations every year to show that we are so broad minded. Oh, we must have promotions to at least 50% women. These are common things that I have heard in my 22 years of career. Most of it, honestly, when I hear, becomes like a boardroom tick need to have kind of a thing. So suppose that we remove all the diversity metrics known to corporates as of today, okay, with immediate effect. Would your organization hire, promote, engage, and give opportunities in exactly the same manner as it is being dealt with today?
I think that's a very relevant and insightful question. So for other organizations, I can't say much. I understand because sometimes now more often I have seen the targets are actually guiding or dictating the journey. But for us in Srijan, I think gender inclusion isn't about any compliance or targets. It's more about conviction that we've been doing it. So, and from our own experience, we have seen that the balance, the diverse teams that we've brought or are there, they don't just look better on paper, but it also helps in making better decisions. It has helped us in driving better outcomes and have built healthier culture. So the belief that this thing works, the mindset of including people, having that kind of organization is, I think, actually driving this kind of change, the kind of optics that we've been using it to make it inclusive. So that actually is helping it. So like recently, I'll quote an example of an interview we were doing for a senior position where at the end, the shortlist was both male and female there. So one way was just directly going with the targets and hiring that female. But I think at the end, as a panelist, where we took the decision, we found one of the candidate making better say about the strategic management and the leadership change that the kind we expected from that particular position. So that candidate was chosen on the basis of diversity of thoughts, rather just seeing that this person comes from specific gender. So I believe this is if this is in the mindset of the organization, that actually helps taking that decision. Rather, it's just we are doing it by the for the sake of target. So right now that was not happening in that sense. So it's actually helping.
Awesome. So what I gain from here is that clearly it's a leadership mindset to reward merit over appearance or gender or availability or whatever. It is all about merit, and whoever irrespective of gender, demonstrates that merit, can be chosen for a particular position to make it more inclusive and more fair.
Yeah.
Right? So leadership mindset clearly dominates the process of making inclusion an impactful exercise, is what I can gather from this example. So Danish, coming to you, what is that one uncomfortable truth about leadership behavior that in fact slows down inclusion as a concept?
You are on mute,
You're
Danish.
gonna mute Danish.
Oh, sorry. Uh, so I'll take a leaf out of what Preeti and Namita have shared. If I had to call out one uncomfortable truth, it would be this. Leaders rely on what feels familiar when evaluating people, especially when they believe that they are being fair. And this doesn't come from a lack of intent. Most leaders genuinely want to be objective. They want to reward capability. They want to reward performance, potential. But in practice, what tends to happen is that we recognize and value behaviors that align with what we've seen work before.
Hmm.
So, things like what confidence looks like, how leadership presence is expressed, how someone communicates or participates, these have become reference points.
Hmm.
And the challenge is that these reference points are not neutral. They have been shaped over time by past leadership styles, dominant workplace norms, and often by fairly narrow and sometimes binary expectations of behavior.
Hmm.
So when someone shows up differently, whether in terms of communication style, in terms of expression, or overall presence, it can sometimes be misread. Not consciously, but subtly. And this is
Hmm.
where inclusion can slow down because, even without intent, leaders may end up rewarding familiarity over diversity.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Another dimension which I would like to also call out is well-intentioned avoidance.
Ah.
Leaders want to be inclusive, but sometimes they are unsure of the language to use. They don't want to say the wrong thing, or
Hmm.
they don't fully understand the nuances, and so they default to neutrality.
Hmm.
But neutrality doesn't necessarily help. It kind of maintains status quo, it maintains your existing patterns.
Hmm.
And if I look at ACG's context, since I work for ACG, what
Hmm.
I found encouraging is that there's a conscious effort to move beyond just intent. For
Hmm.
example, the focus on empathy as a leadership capability, or
Hmm.
whether we talk about creating spaces where leaders can reflect, discuss, build awareness. And also, gradually, our conversations are also shifting from being fair to understanding experience. So, we're moving from that space where we can help leaders to move from an unconscious pattern to more conscious decision making. And, that shift that we are seeing and which needs to continue is from am I being fair to, am I being aware of what I might be missing? Because inclusion really begins with that kind of awareness. As our understanding of identity evolves,
Hmm.
uh, and this includes recognizing gender beyond the binary. It becomes even more important for leaders to recognize, uh, or rather, leaders to expand their lens of what capability and leadership can look like. And
Hmm.
that is what, starts changing decisions. So it's not intent alone, but more of awareness and action is what I would like to talk about.
Excellent. So just like we all know, E equal to what that motion theory,
MC
MC
square.
square.
MC square, like that, it's just not intent, it's intent plus awareness plus action raised to 2 or raised to infinity, if we want to say it, to keep expanding. Awesome. So we have explored what companies are doing, what individually we have experienced, what we feel should be done, where is that one behavior that organizations need to expand, become more aware, right? We've explored all of that. And in all of this, what I definitely get from the panel is that it's just not about the management, the leadership, or a layer of employees who are involved in all of this. So clearly, like Samir has mentioned, inclusion needs to be aligned to the overall individual and group objectives. If diversity is seen as something that only flows top down and nobody else is really bothered about it, or if it's a compliance or a FOMO of others doing it and we are not, then it's just remains a tick in the box. Great insight, Samir. I hope that all of us as panel have been able to add to this thought process of yours. Having said that, he's made one more statement. He says that we want to have viewpoints that can be disruptive to be innovative, which means we can invite different thinking, which I think flows from what Danish you were mentioning. That you need to break the boundaries or break the glass ceiling, move away from the sticky floors of thought and so on and so forth. Right. So fabulous insights you've gained, Samir, which brings me to one question common to all the panelists. If we have to design the dream inclusive organization, what are the things or beliefs or systems or practices that we would want to design an ideal workplace where across layers, individuals and group level, we will co-create a system that is fair, aware, and equitable, not equal for all. Equitable given the differences, respecting the differences that each one adds and brings to the table. So, in any order of your preference.
I can go first.
Yeah.
So it cannot be one thing for sure, Radhika. It has to be a combination of many things, and I'm sure my other panelists will mention as well. But something where I have a challenge or I've had challenge in the past is when leaders pretend to behave that they believe in it. And the reality is they really don't innately. And then it becomes an HR KPI all the time. Because HR is telling I'm hiring diversity. So one of the diversity conferences I was in, and there was a panelist and my CHRO was sitting there, and the question came in like, why there is a mandate that we need to hire 50% of women. So if you see the reality today, we are still not there, because if you see the average number percentage somewhere ranges from 20% to 30% in any organization. When I come to specifically gender diversity, which is being tracked very heavily, because as an organization, I think we are, as a country, I don't think so. We still talk about LGBTQ plus at all yet. We are still very naive on that front, and it is picking up, as Danish mentioned, that now inclusion of partners and all. But then still, as a country, we are not comfortable. We are not comfortable coming out. We are not comfortable talking. And the generation mix we have is very difficult to manage that mindset across the board to have a consistency. So how do we break that whole thing of that leaders don't pretend that they believe in it and they continue to do so? So the answer given by my leader was, the day it becomes that all organizations have 50-50%, this whole norm will go off. That means then we will look at people hiring. I don't think so. We are still able to have matrices on other genders, other binaries, right? Because we are not tracking, and as a country, we are not ready yet. We are still moving towards it. So, and we have a huge generation to manage. We are still have baby boomers to the gen whatever kicking in, and it's difficult. It's difficult. Like, I had a shock when my son came and talked about this when he was around 7 year old, and he's 13 today. I'm still talking about 5 years back, and they were aware of all these words which says gay, lesbian, and whatever, and not. And still, as a parent, I was shocked, and I was like, why am I even shocked? It's a normal word. Why I am behaving this differently? So we have come up with a culture. We have been taught certain things where there are still apprehensions of talking about these very, very openly. So that means, as leaders, if it is not becoming a walk the talk, we will never be able to change. I think there is one question which is already there, and I don't mind taking it, as how middle management play either in enabling and blocking. That's where, if our top management says with HR, okay, we believe in this KPI and we will follow, and your middle management doesn't believe in it and keeps constantly cribbing about why you're forcing me to hire women, why are you forcing me to hire women, HR is forcing us to hire women, it will never change. That means it has to become an eccentric norm saying that I need to balance. And it's not about just getting women in the team. It's about balancing the approaches, balancing the view and opinion in a team. And today with a global setup I am in, I am also looking at geography. Like I have told my team not to hire from France at all because we are a very French organization, French-centric team. So we are moving towards European countries to even have geography as one of the parameter. And that is because not because we just want to add women into the team or we want to add some other binary into the team. It's because of the diversification of thoughts which comes in. There are different perspectives which comes in, which has to be respected. And that actually leads the organization to succeed today. So cut shorting my whole story is that we need to really believe in what we are doing as an organization and not pretend. And if we believe in it, it should become the culture and not a forceful act by the human resources that because HR is telling me and it is in my KPI, I need to do it.
Excellent. In fact, I think you unconsciously also answered one more question which has come out. How can leaders be held accountable for inclusion outcomes without reducing it to a KPI exercise?
No, to add on to this, I'm telling you, when you said co-create word, no, it was a beautiful word. Co-creating is nothing but that you are acknowledging that it is a joint venture between the leaders and the HR, and mostly HR leadership owns this KPI and owns this norm in the organization to create an inclusive and psychological safe environment. If that doesn't come as a culture and which the leaders believe in, then trust me, nobody. It's like head of the family, right? We have all followed what our fathers or grandfathers have followed as a norm, and we believe in it. And it works like that in the organization as well. So each one of the leader, whether it is a tenure, middle, or at the front line, has to believe and walk the talk for this to work in tandem. Otherwise, we will be still striving to say that we believe in it, we showcase outside because we have very beautiful policies, but then end of the day, is it really being followed? It becomes question mark, and it is also inconsistent across the organization because of certain leaders who don't innately believe in it but just pretends to say yes, I am very diversity pro, but actually it is not. And fading out such leaders from the organization would help, if I have to be brutally strong over here.
Okay.
Even adding to Preeti, I mean, I also feel the inclusion is not a KPI to be achieved. It is a culture to be. It is a culture to be demonstrated, right? See, and even the policies are created at the top, but the middle management, they interpret, they apply, or they may dilute also. So in short, I can say leaders may set the tone, but middle managers determine the reality.
They are the ones who are implementing actually on the ground. You're right, Prakash.
True, true, yeah.
Awesome. And there are
So-
there's one more question here. How organizations can ensure equitable access to high visibility projects and leadership opportunities? So, who would like to take this on?
I think I can go here.
Yes,
So-
Danish, come on.
I think the starting point is to recognize that access to high visibility work is less structured than we think. A lot of these opportunities don't come through formal processes. They come through manager nominations, informal networks. Who comes to mind in the moment? And that is where inequity can creep in. Because when decisions are unstructured, we tend to default to familiarity, comfort, and visibility, which not everyone has equal access to. So the first shift organizations need to make is towards intentionality, making these opportunities more visible and less dependent on informal access. For example, clearly defining what counts as a high visibility project, then creating a transparent nomination or application process, rotating opportunities rather than relying on the same set of people. Even small structure can reduce this bias significantly. The second piece of this is that you need to, build that leadership awareness. Managers play a huge role in who gets exposure. So helping leaders ask simple but powerful questions, who am I repeatedly giving opportunities to? Who might be equally capable but less visible? Am I equating visibility with potential? Because we often, what we see as readiness, is actually just proximity and exposure.
Hmm.
And thirdly, I think organizations need to actively build visibility for people who may not naturally get it. Like Preeti just shared, not everyone self promotes in the same way. Not everyone
Hmm.
has the same access to the same networks. And
Hmm.
when you think about individuals who are newer to the system, have different communication styles, or don't align with traditional expectations of, presence or confidence, uh, we need to ensure that visibility is enabled, not assumed. You know, because our traditional leadership pathways have been built around these, narrow definitions of what we mean by presence, confidence, fit, and we need to redefine, readiness. We need to redefine potential,
Hmm.
and we, you know, as organizations, we measure promotions, we measure representation, but
Hmm.
we don't track who got that exposure, who led critical projects, who was in the room where decisions were made. And these are these moments that actually shape people's careers, right? So for me, it comes down to these three things, structure opportunities so that they're not informal, build
Hmm.
leader awareness to reduce bias, and track access, not just the outcomes. You do these three things well, you'll be fine as an
Beautiful.
organization.
So, of this, I'm going to pick one sentence and ask the final question to Namita. Namita, track access, track potential, track performance. A lot of this revolves around tracking, right? And most of us in corporates, or for that matter, in our own avenues where we are either consultants or experts or solution providers, we track a lot of things. But how do we align the tracking mechanisms to inclusivity to create that kind of impact that we want as a panel today to spread in the industry?
Yeah.
So, how do we align tracking to impact? Is my question to you.
I think this also is in connection with one question that came here, that it shouldn't be part of KPIs of leaders. So it shouldn't be that easy answer. See, I would say, and not just answering this question, but from the previous questions also, I wanted to say the statement. This mindset shift, we all are individuals as humans, no? So it is not easy. We have a long way to go. So we are being conditioned as a person, as a unit in society. So suddenly, if we'll expect certain changes, because I can't be a different person at my workplace and a different person at my home. And that's what we face the reality. If, for example, if there's a male leader and you ask suddenly, complete this target, is a part of your KPI. So either to perform for the role as a job, the person would be complying to targets, but may not be ready internally, in the mindset shift may not have happened. So this is a gradual process. Maybe sometimes I feel, yes, pressure may be required through KPIs, or not always thinking that we should go top to down, but rather using 360-degree feedbacks. You should take from bottom to top feedbacks about inclusion, inclusivity from team members. How are they feeling comfortable with that kind of leader? So using those things, and plus either we can use narrative-based reviews, rather specifically targeting on certain numbers. So using all that, I believe through certain force, the mindset shift will happen. I'll quote an example of an organization, in our own organization also. Earlier, when we had gender ratio women, that was around 10 to 15% only. So I think not there was not so much focus on that particular segment, not so much focus on those policies, arrangements, and all that. But when the number gradually shifted in next 3, 4 years, the number became 30 to 40%. Suddenly, there were people who were raising concerns. There were that opposite gender, the diversity, the culture it came. So there were expectations in terms of policies, cultures, flexibilities, and all that kind of need arise. And the organization also started shifting that gradual shift. So the policy started becoming more inclusive. Well, the realization happened, yes, there are capable people across all genders and all that. So that's how that shift happened. So I think and as Preeti was mentioning about gay, lesbian, all, so we have a very long way to go. We can't even right now imagine or think of including people of all streams, but right now this itself is a big task to do. Yeah.
No, just to add on here, that is why now organizations are shifting from focusing on diversity alone to making it more as an inclusion, right? And that automatically gives an opportunity for every kind of individual to feel part of the organization being heard. And that's the right approach. Like at least Schneider Electric, I know we are not anymore talking about diversity alone, which was always meant as women in the past, but to moving saying that we need to create an organization which is inclusive and psychological safe, which automatically includes everybody, whether you are a man, woman, and many a times when we celebrate Women's Day and men will come, why are you discriminating us? Why is that not for us? So I think organizations are slowly going away with all these celebrations, which used to be like a chocolate and a flower, to doing meaningful things for the organization, right? And less of a metrics, because the more and more you focus on the culture, as Prakash mentioned, it becomes a normal way of living and not really required to call out people who are different individuals, but just giving a whole space where you feel that you are part of this organization, you are heard, and you are contributing equally or equitably, as Radhika mentioned. So it's very important, Namita. You're right.
Actually, organizations are not, I mean, they've gone beyond inclusion to belongingness now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the next step. We are not yet there for sure, but
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right, Danish.
True that. In fact, there's just one food for thought I want all panel members to think about. When we speak about diversity, inclusion, belongingness, there's a lot of focus on what the organization is doing for the employees. The food for thought I want to leave all of you, not only on the panel, but also in the audience is it a one-way street or is it a two-way street? How can we as individuals, employees, consultants, specialists also live these terms, demonstrate by action, and make sure the organization does not feel like a universal giver and nothing comes back, right? How can we do that? Any thoughts on that? Because diversity, inclusion, belongingness is not just a top down in any case for sure. That's been really established well by all of you.
So I think, yeah, as organizations, yeah, the idea is that the inclusion gets built by policies. But from individuals, it is more of their everyday behavior, which comes from everyone in the system. You know, if as individuals we do small things like asking ourselves and noticing, you know, what assumptions are we making? How are we speaking to people? Am I creating safe space for others in conversations? And in these small moments, you kind of, you know, contribute to the organization by changing the culture one step at a time. You know, now organizations might, for example, create platforms, you know, whether it is your ERGs, whether it is your speak up channels, or, you know, engagement platforms. But we as individuals participate. You know, we need to engage with those spaces. We need to share our experiences, give feedback, participate in these conversations. That will make it a two-way street, is what I feel.
Wonderful. Any other views, Prakash, Preeti, Namita?
I think adding to completely agreeing to Danish, I would say working on our own unconscious bias. Because if we keep on reflecting on that and we are aware of it, I think it's going to help.
And to add on to that, it's not about only working on our own unconscious bias, but also raising it when you see it happening. Like there are, like I can give you a simple example. You are in a meeting and suddenly there are three, four folks who start speaking in Hindi, forgetting that South Indians, not all of them knows Hindi. And then, you know, you just keep quiet. And at least we have started practicing saying that I think we should switch to a common language. And then one, twice, thrice, it becomes a norm. Then people start remembering that should not be doing that anymore. So it's not only about ensuring that you build the policies, but then how are you implementing that and how are you actually making it come to life is something which is a game changer. And it has to happen across all the levels. And as you rightly said, it's a two-way street for sure. If we only keep thumping the policies onto people and people don't want to adapt it for yourself and to make your life better in the organization, it will never work. So there are people who keep taking these kind of comments and jokes on women or jokes on different genders, and there are so many things which gets tolerated, right? Just like that, because either you don't want to fight back or you don't want to make a scene around things. But then if not in a public forum, there are always options of going and talking one on one and saying, hey, look, I know your intent is not there, but this is deteriorating, it is upsetting people around. So not only for yourself, but you see when somebody else is getting upset about certain comments which doesn't make you feel inclusive, then you go and talk about it. If not with the person, then escalate it to your manager or escalate it to your HR, so that it comes to the notice. Because again, you are not everywhere as a leader or a human resource, right? People on the ground are, who are seeing every day, day in and out, culture of what's happening, who is talking how, who is behaving how. So once that becomes a norm, that I will stand up for myself, and as well as I'll help others to not tolerate what is beyond norm, is something is which I would suggest and recommend strongly to everyone, that we need to do it by ourselves.
Okay.
Actually,
And
it's not
Prakash?
just, if you look at it, it's not just top down, it could also be lateral.
Absolutely.
Peer allyship is something which we should really practice. It could mean gently supporting a colleague in a meeting, just passing on the mic. That itself is a big deal. So I think on that note, let's pass on the mic to Prakash.
That's a good one. Yes, Prakash. Your closing thoughts, please.
Yeah, Vicky also mentioned, I mean, one is as a leaders, we have to walk the talk, right? I mean, everything looks good on the paper, but as a leaders, if you don't reflect, or our presence is not felt, our culture is not demonstrated, it not be widely accepted by all the employees. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Over to Radhika.
Okay, so with that, I'll just add one note from one of my blogs in context of gender diversity and strengthening. So a lot of people today believe that gender diversity is empowering the women, or for that matter, empowering non-binary genders, and at the same time suppressing the male voice. And in my view, impact is created when you balance everyone together, leverage everyone's collective strength, and together create an organization that really works for every one of us. So with that, I think we'll hand over back to Faisal. I hope we've answered all the questions from the audience, guys, and you have taken some great insights from all of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Radhika, for skillfully steering the discussion and ensuring a seamless flow of ideas and excellent engagement. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists. Your perspective, experience, and candid insights added immense value to the conversation and made it both meaningful and impactful. For those eager to learn and grow, the recording of today's session is available on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. Thank you to all our participants for being part of this session. Your presence made the discussion even more meaningful. We look forward to welcoming you to our next session on the topic Building Purpose First Cultures Across Generations on April 2nd, 2026. With that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you for being part of this journey. Take care and farewell for now. Thank you, dear
Thank
speakers,
you.
once again.
And happy Gudi Padwa and Ugadi to everybody present here.
Happy
Yeah,
festival
yeah,
of
thank you.
whatever you are
Thank you all.
celebrating, being a diverse organization or country we are in.
Oh yeah, there's
Many
Chaitra Navratri,
festivals.
Cheti Chand, and few more also. So to all
Yes.
Indians, happy festival
Happy
today.
festivals.
Yeah, happy festival.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.